Okay, I am from the last generation of draftees. And what that meant was that we would require to spend 2 years on active duty, or 24 months, or 730 days, whichever felt the longest. The people who enlisted would spend, in the Army anyway, would spend 3 years or more, but then they got to choose what job they would take. It was had an occupation of choice. Draftees were like leaves in the wind. We just fluttered down to anywhere along the spectrum of experience. And as you can expect, some people did worse than others. And some guys had truly unspeakably horrible things happen way out here. And then there was the other side, and that's where I fell. As a matter of, no, not here. I fell way over there because I had the best job, the best assignment of anyone I've ever met or heard of. And I'm going to tell you how that happened. I had been in school with draft deferment for 2 years. And then I saw the movie blow up. And like thousands of other young men, I decided to become a photographer. So I dropped out of college, went to New York City, took a course in commercial photography, met a girl, became engaged, and then the Army grabbed me and sent me down to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, where my drill sergeant took an immediate dislike to me, an intense dislike. And I know every trainee thinks that his drill sergeant was persecuting him, but I was truly a special case. The whole company knew it. And when the sergeant, you see, he had his own problems with the military police. And this greatly annoyed our company commander, the captain. And when it came time at the end of the cycle to assign all of the draftees to their different occupational choices, the captain saw that he had one slot open for military police school, and he thought what a great joke it would be on the sergeant if he put me in that slot. Now, I know that's true because of someone who was on the inside who told me, and also because in our company, we had a state trooper who had been drafted, and we had a DC Metro Police officer, both of whom had wonderful qualifications and an intense desire to be MPs, and they didn't get it. I had zero qualifications, even less interest, and I got it. So I went down to Fort Gordon, where I learned it wasn't such a bad assignment after all. And while I was learning that, my fiance, remember her back in New York, she was busy planning a wedding, because at the end of this 8-week training period, we would have 2 weeks leave, and thought we'd use that window to kind of follow through on the proposal. So that was the plan, but of course in the Army you can't really make plans. And just before the end, we got those orders, and 2/3 of the class, myself included, got orders for Vietnam. Now this was fall of 1968, and that is the bloodiest year of the war. Nearly 17,000 Americans were killed that year. And God knows how many were wounded and maimed and so forth and so on. So it was kind of a downer to get those orders. But then a day or two later, someone came around and said, since you're going anyway, would you like to go as a sentry dog handler? And my hand went up right away, because an extra set of eyes and ears when people are trying to kill you, I thought that was a good thing. And I found out it was even better than that. During the orientation, they told us that the Army considered the dogs too valuable to risk losing. So in the event that the dog alerted to an approaching enemy, it was the job of the handler to take the dog to a safe place and let other people respond to the intruder, which made sentry dog handlers have one of the lowest casualty rates in the war zone. And so now things change a little bit for me. Here I had a ticket to the biggest show of my generation, and the closest thing to a guarantee of coming back in one piece. I mean, it wasn't something I was looking forward to, but I could see it was something I might look back on fondly. My bride-to-be, however, was a little less sanguine about the whole thing. She saw her shiny new husband being shipped away for 12 months before he was even housebroken, and was not happy. So she cast about for some kind of idea, and she had a large family. She came to me and said, I know I have a relative who works in the Pentagon. He might be able to help you. And I said, I don't think I need any help at this point, but what does he do? She said, I don't know, but he's a sergeant. And I said, the Pentagon has so many generals, they trip over each other in the hallway. A sergeant doesn't have the clout to help me. Let's forget that and we'll just keep going. Well, then as the wedding festivities came, we met all the other relatives, including the sergeant, who came up to me and immediately opened with, I'm sorry, I wish I'd known earlier. I might have been able to do something for you, but it's too late now. You've got your orders. There's no time left. And thinking he was only being polite, I said, well, that's all right. I'm okay. And we went off on our honeymoon out to California, so I'd be close to the Oakland Army Terminal when I had to go. What I didn't know, and this again is my supposition, is that the sergeant had a romantic streak. I think. I've never met him again, so I don't know for sure. But I know he knew something I didn't know, which is that in a bureaucracy, a clerk in the right place can have more power than a general. And the reason I say that is that on the last day of the honeymoon, the day before I was due to report, I get a phone call from someone I didn't know. And in those days, you could believe strangers on the telephone. And he said, do not go to Oakland. Your orders have been changed. Go to San Francisco and report to the 30th Military Police Battalion, Presidio, San Francisco. Okay. So I went, walked in the door of the personnel office, handed the soldier behind the desk my orders, and I said, these are my written orders, but I'm not doing that because I'm here on verbal orders from the Pentagon. And eyebrows sort of raised around the room, and I was very quickly ushered into the office of the personnel officer, who, or the officer of personnel, whatever it was. Anyway, we sat across the desk from each other, and he looked, studied the paperwork I had, and said, this never happens. So this is wartime, it never happens. And I said, well, here's the phone number for confirmation. And he called the number. And the officer on the other end of the line said he never heard of me. So right away, I'm picturing myself being led away in handcuffs, forever. But they kept talking and asking me questions. And eventually the name of this relative came up. Of course, I didn't say he was a relative, but it came up. And the officer on the other end said, well, he knows what he's talking about. If he's involved, we'll get it straightened out. And just like that, now I am in Presidio, San Francisco. I am at possibly the most beautiful military post in the United States. It is at the foot of the Golden Gate Bridge. I've got the marina on one side and the Pacific Ocean on the other. And it's got trees and hills. And more importantly, it doesn't have room for married enlisted people. So the bride and myself went out and found an apartment on Geary Boulevard, 2 blocks off Golden Gate Park. And in the morning when I left to go to work, I could hear the seagulls barking on Seal Rock. I mean, it was magical. And you're thinking, well, that's nice, but that's not the best job ever. That's right. Imagine this is a game show. I have now got in the studio. I'm in the audience. To get down to the front as a contestant, the next step had to happen. The brass of the battalion went over my personnel record to try to figure out why the Pentagon, in its infinite wisdom, would change things around and send me to them. So they were a new battalion. It was formed in response to the riots in the mid-'60s, and they were not up to full strength. And on paper, they had a need for a photographer, and I had that course. So now I'm a contestant. They bring me down to the front of the stage, and I'm given all the equipment, which includes a Graflex Super Speed graphic camera, which is the old, the kind with the bellows and the 4x5 sheet film in the back, and nothing automatic. I mean, it was a dream for me. I love that. But that's not all. That's just the first part. That's just the opening brass. Behind the first curtain here is the fact that I need a place to keep the photographic equipment and the negatives and the prints and the other things. So they gave me an office. And, well, I mean, it's true. It was an unused bathroom in the supply building, but still. I moved in a table and a chair and a file cabinet. It had a lock on the door, and I had the only office in the battalion with its own bathroom. Even the colonel had to share with the other officers, you see. And then, that's not all. Behind curtain number 2, in order to develop the pictures that I took during any given few days, I had to go down post to the post photography lab to develop the film and print the prints. So they gave me a Jeep for my personally permanent assignment. I didn't have to sign it out. I didn't have to ask permission. I had the thing. And it had a parking space right next to the headquarters building. There were very few officers who had that set up, and none of the sergeants. Now, it's true, the vehicle was so old and worn that you didn't even have to put it in the clutch to shift the gears, but it ran, and it looked like the other ones. It was mine. And that brings us to the curtain number 3, which is really the apple in the strudel. This was a new position in a new battalion. And the Army has standard operating procedure for everything they do. Every job, every task. They didn't have one for this. So I got to write my own. And I had in a provision in there that I only worked by appointment with 24 hours notice. And the colonel signed off on it, and it was distributed. Now, bear in mind, I am not yet a private first class. And show me anybody else who has that package. You know, I don't know. And I'm not bragging, it just, you know, I just lucked out. It worked that way. Now, how it worked in reality, the best example is when President Nixon met with President Park of South Korea at the Presidio, and the 30th provided the security. I was with the small group that received Secret Service briefing, and when the thing was taking place, the event, I realized that everybody had a place to be. The public came in along given pathways, and we handed out little American and little Korean flags for them to wave. And the press were ushered in behind roped-off cordoned area. And the 2 presidents came in by helicopter, and they had a place where they had to stand and make a speech. Everybody had a place to be but me. I drove all over the place so I could document what the security things were. I got closer to the presidents than any of the press did because I was an MP, I was part of the security. Now, if you have that kind of freedom and those kinds of privileges, of course you got to keep your head down, and the people above you are going to be jealous, and everyone outranked me. But I was, as long as I turned in the pictures I was supposed to, and didn't make any trouble for the sergeant major who was my my boss, I was protected. And that was my story. When I got out of the service, later on, I went to work for the Veterans Administration for 8 years. And there I tried to give back, because to the guys who hadn't had that kind of good luck. And I spent that time working with people to get them their disability benefits and getting their families survivor benefits. And as the holiday evolves and you want to, if you feel like you need to thank someone for their service, it isn't done with a lapel pin and a handshake. It's done by protecting those benefits and making sure that they're still available to people. Thank you.